few years ago now, I was speaking at a conference like this, and I was asked to speak on innovation and creativity and give the audience some tools to take away with them. And I thought I'd done a pretty good job. Only in the coffee break, a gentleman from Heinz came up to me and said, "Jonathan, that was very entertaining, very funny, but rubbish." And I was feeling a bit crestfallen, and then the chairman of the conference came over to me and said, "Jonathan, that was great, really loved that. And I wonder if you can help us. We've got a bit of a problem in that we were going to have a workshop this afternoon on creativity and innovation, and the guy that was going to do the talk is stuck at the airport. So your tools sounded really interesting. Would you mind doing a workshop this afternoon?" And I thought, designing a workshop for 200 people in about 3 hours was a bit of a challenge, but actually this guy from Heinz had really wound me up. So I thought, yes, I'll do it. So after lunch, we're in the auditorium, and there were about 20 people in the front row. And I said to them, "Right, guys, you're going to design a bottle of tomato ketchup to beat Heinz. You've got 10 minutes, and in 10 minutes, you're going to stand on this stage and present your idea to everybody." And you could see them sort of shuffling along, thinking, "It's not me." I said, "No, it's you." I said, "But you've got one thought. I want you to pretend that you're all Micky Mouse, and you're designing this ketchup for Mickey and his friends." And you could see them scratching their heads. And after about 4 or 5 minutes, they were laughing and joking. And after 8 or 9 minutes, there was one chap, and he put his arm up and said, "I'll do it." Well, this guy leapt up on the stage, and he said, "Right, our ketchup comes in a squeezy bottle. And with the squeezy bottle, you get 6 different caps. And each cap squeezes the ketchup out in a different shape. And we're going to create a food website for children to do food art with our ketchup. And we've got a brand name for it. We're going to call it Sketchup." At which point I got my phone and said, "Is that the patent office? I'd just like to..." And is sketchup.com available? And fortunately, the gentleman from Heinz did come up to me afterwards and said, "That was great," and point taken. So why am I telling you this story? Well, I guess like many people here, you were rapt by the recent referendum in Scotland. And I thought it was amazing that 85% of the electorate came out to vote. But I was also amazed how ridiculous a lot of it was. Isn't it ridiculous that in this day and age, people go and walk to a polling station, put a cross on a piece of paper, and those pieces of paper get flown from the Highlands and Islands using all of those fossil fuels and all of that paper, and then it takes 10 to 12 hours to count the votes by hand to get a result. You know, if you can bet online and bank online and vote for the X Factor online, and in my case, Strictly Come Dancing, why can't we do that in our voting system? And the thing is that things in politics, and I'm not going to get political, by the way, haven't changed in centuries. You only need to look at this image of Parliament 150 years ago, and it's the same today. And I don't know whether you guys feel the same, but I'm embarrassed at the way our politicians behave. You know, they are constantly point scoring rather than thinking and listening to the debate. They're just arguing with one another, trying to win an argument rather than listening to what they have to say. And I know parliamentarians of both sides, and there are some great ones on both sides, and there are some awful ones on both sides. It's a fact. But if parliamentarians, if businesses behaved like this, if boards of directors behaved like this, then nothing would get done. And in public companies, they'd probably get fired. And this sort of led me on to thinking about the Scottish referendum. And the fact is that just before the vote, there were 10 million posts on Facebook. And what was interesting about this was I knew people on both sides of the vote, yes and no. And because they were my friends, I actually listened to the arguments rather than picked my corner, red or blue. And as a result, I made my own decision. And it feels to me like we all could learn a lesson for this. Maybe Facebook, maybe social media could replace the House of Lords as the body of veto for policy. Maybe the Scottish referendum should be the way we go forward on all big decisions. After all, we all manage our own budgets, we all have income, and we all have outgoings, and we seem to manage. If we all knew that there was 650 billion of revenue available to us, which is what the government has to spend in tax, we could maybe then vote on, yes, if the health service gets so much and the roads get so much and the police get so much, we'll then vote you in to do a job and we'll measure you on your performance, just like we're measured at work. Rather than vote them in for 4 years and have the last year with them just wrestling to get into power again, rather than doing anything positive and running the country. Now, things have changed dramatically in our nation over the last 100 years. 100 years ago, a modern day lifetime, we were the heartbeat of an industrial world. And today, we seem happy that we are the 6th ranked nation in the world by GDP output. But actually, we've only just crept back into the top 100 by GDP growth, which means nearly 100 nations, including China and India, so we're in the bottom quartile, are growing faster than we are. And that's really scary when you've got children who are going to grow up in this new world. So the next 30 years is going to see a radical change as in the last 30 years. I spotted this a couple of years ago, a research grant in the US for researching the 3D printing of meat. Now, the story goes that if you've got the molecular compound for meat, you can print it. NASA are looking at 3D printing of food so that they can send people out on deep space missions so they can print food. There's now a house in Amsterdam that's been 3D printed. So actually that begs the question, you know, is a workforce, is that mill that we saw a moment ago that was the heartbeat of an industrial world, is a workforce actually relevant anymore when we'll print everything and technology and IP and creativity is the thing that's going to keep us going? And the thing is about creativity is it happens with the young. Albert Einstein was 26 when he had his breakthrough moment. Charles Darwin, 28. Louis Braille was 15. Mark Zuckerberg. It's still happening today. It's young, creative people that make change. Yet creativity is not taught in our schools. You know, I always think about accountants. You know, I watch them walking along like this, very purposefully, and their head seems to be slightly over to the left. It's because they've got very heavy left biological brains. They've no creative. And I spend a lot of time with design students. I'm a visiting professor at Huddersfield University, and I see design students walking around the campus like this. And most people think it's because they are lazy or on some sort of substance, but it's because they've got very heavy right brains. And what we need is whole brain thinking. A little while ago, I asked the students of Huddersfield to redesign the city in 24 hours, and I gave them a cash prize, so they were really up for it. And I mixed fashion designers with industrial designers with architects and graphics, and I said, go and redesign Huddersfield in 24 hours and the best team will win a prize. Actually, everybody was given a cash prize because the work was amazing. I asked one of the teams to redesign litter. And most of us have this view of litter that it's, you know, a bin a little like this, ugly and horrible, and it's emptied by a guy in a high visibility jacket once a day. They came back and said, our bins are beautiful and they're emptied once a week because it's the same size, but under the ground you've got a big hole and a lorry comes along at the end of the week and pulls it out of the ground. And when you throw food papers into the bin, it belches. Because why can't we recognise when somebody throws something away? And when a can gets thrown into it, it clanks as if it's gone down a mine shaft. And actually, bottles and cans have a recyclable value. So after the 100th can goes in, some lucky litterer gets a voucher for a free drink. So we actually reward people throwing litter away. So I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if we had a creative director, a young creative director, a right brain person on all of our boards of directors, as well as a finance director? Maybe that's what we need. If you look at things in a different way, you get different solutions. I was in China not so long ago, and I saw this fairly ugly looking retail store, but it was amazing. I don't know about you, but whenever I get an aftershave bottle and it comes to the end, I think, I've got to throw it away. and it seems such a waste. Here what they've said is buy a really expensive, beautiful bottle and refill it. And they've put perfume in whiskey optic bottles, so you come with your beautiful bottle, there's no recycling because it's there for life. So if we do the opposite, I was talking to a banker, unfortunately I occasionally have to speak to bankers, and he said the problem with banks is they're small and boring. So I said, well, what if they were big and exciting? What if people visited them every week because they were so cool? Maybe you'd have an investment supercentre where there was an art dealer and a wine importer and lots of things you could invest your money in instead of a boring ISA or something. And trains, you know, what about if we all want to get home on the 5 o'clock train or the 6 o'clock train and it's busy and we have to stand up? Why can't we put a TV room in the train to watch the game which kicks off at 7 o'clock and everybody watches the game on the train home? Why can't we have evening classes on the train on the way home? There are simple creative solutions to change the way we live. And schools, it's a bit like Parliament. They haven't changed. I wanted to go back to my old school and just have a look at it. Nearly 50 years ago, I know it's the same. They might have a monitor on the wall, but it's still 40 children being taught by one teacher. In this day and age, why can't everybody be taught by Professor Brian Cox on science? We have 450,000 teachers in the UK, so logic would say that 10% are world-class and amazing. The majority, okay. But somebody's got that rump of 10% who are awful. And I had a couple of those myself. Why can't everybody be taught by amazing people? Why do we have to be taught languages by somebody with a view about teaching languages, but with 40 people in the class of mixed abilities? Why can't we twin with a school in Beijing and get kids to communicate with kids about Wayne Rooney and, God forbid, One Direction? The art of communication, the art of learning languages is to communicate, not to pass exams. So we can use technology to make things enjoyable. And the thing is that our world has changed dramatically over the last 30 years. The way we govern ourselves has not. Our mobile does all of these things. It's our key, it's money, it's our monitor, it's everything. Nobody goes around without a mobile phone anymore, but 30 years ago, nobody had one. In the next 30 years, with an aging population, with global warming, our world is going to change beyond recognition. We're currently just inside the top 100 by GDP growth. It's scary. And the thing is, as human beings, we are really complacent. We don't change until something comes and scares us into change, because, like the mill owner, his business went away. The textile industry didn't go away. The pharma industry didn't go away. Shipbuilding didn't go away. But somebody hungrier, keener for success, took that business away. People keep smoking, even though they know they shouldn't, and maybe until something comes along and it's too late. So my plea for today is we need to teach creativity and creative thinking in our schools. Instead of an hour doing drama and dance, nothing wrong with drama and dance, once a week, we need it. If we're going to be whole-brained, I would argue that half the curriculum should be creative industries and creative thinking and design thinking. In actual fact, we need lots of Micky Mouse type thinking. Thank you.